I'm just going to read a little piece of scripture from Ephesians chapter 6. Light is so bad. And then we'll say a prayer. Okay. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Okay, so we ask Mary, who's spouse of the Spirit, to help us, to enlighten us, to bring his blessings upon us, his gifts upon us this morning, as we say, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady, seat of wisdom, St. Thomas Aquinas, and St. John Paul II. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So I titled the first talk this morning, The Family, Communion of Love. And I suppose it's a lighter introduction in a sense to theology of the body topics, or that area of research and teaching. But the Church has a lot to say about the family, and we're often probably not aware of it. It has a certain anthropology, okay, the union of one man and one woman, ordered to the procreation of life and the union of spouses. We have a certain anthropology when it comes to the family. And it's good to get this in the broader context, This is actually where we're going when we study more dense topics like TOB, theology of the body. It's really about the family. And I think it's also wholesome, because I remember giving a retreat on a whole retreat on the family a few years ago, 2017, I think. And I thought it was very wholesome, just to do just a complete retreat just on the family, It wasn't just about one topic. It was about the whole of life, in that sense. So we'll dip into it today in some respect. Well, we might. Maybe I'll try this. Oh, it's actually working. Okay. Okay. So, in the context of this, we do have to talk about what the Church has begun to speak of as the civilization of love. Okay. This was spoken of, first of all, by Pope Paul VI. It may have been Christmas Day around 1975, thereabouts. And it's later taken up by Pope John Paul II and other popes, okay? That the civilization of love is that culture, or that civilization, or civis is citizen, okay? So having citizens in living together. The civilization of love originates in the revelation of the God who is love, okay? So there's a certain way of forming society. There's a certain way of forming cultures. There's a certain way of forming communities, okay, which the Church believes is a good way. And our civilization as a whole has to be healthy, okay, in order for human beings to grow and to flourish, okay. Civilization belongs to history, the Pope says, Pope John Paul II, and it answers man's spiritual and moral needs. He says the family, in fact, depends for several reasons on the civilization of love. Okay, so the family itself is not an isolated spot. Okay, it's not just a dot somewhere. It's not just a nuclear thing. The family is a whole fabric. It's a whole kind of web of relationships. And the family to be healthy itself, the family to be what it is, has to be supported by the broader network. Okay? When that culture or that civilization is healthy, when it promotes the family, when it promotes life, when it promotes human dignity, it's called the civilization of love, okay? Because you see the seeds of the kingdom of God there. You see the values that support Christian and other families as well. The Pope says the family is the center and heart of the civilization of love. Okay, so in a properly ordered world, in a world where human beings are being what they are climbing to even greater things, at the heart of that civilization, you will have healthy families. Okay, you'll have strong families. You'll have bonded families. You'll have families where there is communion and love, and within the structures of the family, each individual member will be able to grow, develop in a way that's in accord with human dignity. Okay, to become, that person that they're meant to be, and take up their role, take up their civis. Okay, take up their role of citizenship in the wider culture. Okay, if the family is not doing its work, the culture suffers. Okay, and I'm saying culture, civilization, I'm putting them kind of together at the moment, okay? And if the culture is not supporting the family suffers. Okay, so they're codependent in a certain sense, okay? So the family is the womb of citizenship. Okay, so for 18 years or longer, I suppose if you're Irish, it'll be longer, you'll be in the womb of your family. It's a spiritual womb, St. Thomas Aquinas says. Okay, so you're protected. You're allowed to grow. You learn your basic hygiene. You learn how to tie your laces, button your coat, button your collar, comb your hair. You learn how to say please, thanks, and sorry. Okay, I know it's very simple, but unless you have someone to teach you these things, unless you have a mum, and if you're lucky to have a dad and a mum, who else is going to teach you these things? It's very simple. So when the family is doing its work, when the family has its proper place in society, in that web of network of relationships, the society, the civilization itself becomes healthy. Okay, it doesn't become infected. Okay. 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 What the Pope says, this is from his teaching in On the Family. Okay, Familiaris Consortio. Okay, he says, although there is on the one hand the civilization of love, there continues to exist on the other hand the possibility of a destructive anti-civilization, as so many trends and situations confirm. Okay, so in society, I suppose Pope John Paul II saw two civilizations colliding in a sense. There was one that was destructive, partial, kind of anti-human in some sense. It will be anti-life. And it stopped the mechanisms of the family, in some sense, becoming what they are, what they're meant to be. And human beings as well, every human being, from conception to natural death, being who she or he is meant to be, that sense, okay? And we don't have to go into too much of the ideology of this. We know what it is, okay? We face it in our secular horizon every day. We face it when we just put on the radio in the morning, okay? You'll find, ideas thoughts, propaganda, etc., which do not support the values we're talking about here today. Okay, so shadows on the family. The Pope says in Letter to Families, number 5, he says, unfortunately, various programs backed by very powerful resources nowadays seem to aim at the breakdown of the family. Okay, so the Pope is not saying it's just sporadic. He's not saying it's just something that's happening randomly in our culture. He says that it's systematic. Okay, there is a promotion of certain ways of thinking that hinder human flourishing. Okay, and at the heart of that ability to flourish is the family. Okay, so they don't help the family. So I don't want to go into this too much. I just want to talk, the different areas you can look at today where people are having difficulty, where they're having crises. Okay, the first today is a crisis of parenthood. Okay, sometimes I suppose parents not knowing their role, perhaps not taking up the responsibilities of parenthood, etc. The second one is a crisis of freedom. That freedom has been kind of hijacked, as I say. Freedom to do the good has changed into become freedom to do whatever I like. Okay, it's become an undifferentiated license. Okay, which is actually not the proper understanding of freedom, and it becomes a destructive anti-freedom. It becomes a slavery mechanism, if you understand freedom in that sense, okay? If you make freedom your goal, and that by itself, okay? But we always, as Catholics, we understand freedom in terms of the good and the true, in terms of human dignity, and in terms of happiness. It's bringing us to happiness. Do you understand? It's never just freedom for itself. It's never freedom for its own sake. My aim is not freedom. My aim is happiness. Okay, that's where I'm going. Okay, there's a crisis of maleness and femaleness. Okay, I probably don't have to go into that too much to talk about that. And what we're trying to do in Pure in Heart, in some sense, in our own small way, is to try to identify that and try to build up a proper sense of masculinity. A proper esteem for masculinity and a proper esteem for femininity, what we call authentic femininity or authentic masculinity, okay? Because the culture is very confused here, okay? It's not confirmed, it's not affirmed. People are not affirmed in their identities, okay? According to their biological role and their biological nature, okay? And we can talk in greater detail about that, obviously, okay? And it's not an easy topic. There's a crisis of fidelity. That you may fall in love, you may be head over heels in love with some person, and it doesn't seem to last. Okay, falling in love but not staying in love. Okay, and not persevering to the end. Okay, there's three things that I say. Okay, you fall in love, you stay in love, and you persevere to the end. Okay, but no, it's not happening that way. Okay, in our culture, closely bonded relationships. They break up quite quickly and quite often. Divorce rates are very high. They're up to 50. You've got 1 in 2, 50%. And they may not be first-time marriages either at the same time. Okay, it's that high in European certainly in Britain. It's that high. Okay, there's a crisis of godlessness in our world. It's not so much that God doesn't exist, but he's of no practical use. Do you understand? Cardinal Ratzinger would talk about it as the marginalization of God. Did you go about all your horizons, all your projects, all your career, all the things that you do and you like and you get something from them without God? Okay, God disappears from consciousness. You know, because I like when we bring people, say, to Medjugorje, or we bring them to on World Youth Day. The first thing that happens is a change in consciousness. Okay, God starts coming back into consciousness. And I say the first day is like first few days in Medjugorje for someone's, you know, maybe going to have a conversion, is a battle for consciousness. They begin to think again about the things of God. Let's go to the Blue Cross. Let's climb Cross Mountain. Okay, let's go to the prayer garden, wherever, you know. But you even because you're doing things, you're starting to think differently. And doing it all, you start to enjoy yourself. You say, maybe there's something to this. Okay, and you get to know the Creator again. You get linked in again to the Creator, you know, that sense, okay? But our culture in such a way, and I mean, we could do it ourselves. I mean, we could live a day without being conscious of God. There's so much to do, you know? And I think linked to that, there's a crisis of interiority. People can live on I don't know, a kind of an emotional thing level, hyped up by music all day, you know, and sound, okay? And, you know, and there's a crisis of hope. People are losing a sense that life is worth living. There's a crisis of mental health, okay, in our country, for example. It's even more pronounced now among the youth, you know, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. And it's probably to do with screen time and other factors as well, you know, but there is a crisis of hope in our culture as well, okay? So those are the shadows, okay? I don't want to go into them too much because you can spend all day here, okay, in the shadows. I don't want to do that. I want to be, you know, a little bit more optimistic, hopeful in that sense, just to give you a sense of what's happening in the culture, okay? So how do we understand the family, a sacred institution as Catholics, okay? So the family, for us, is the first natural society, okay? It's the first unit, or the first basic cell of human living, okay? If you want to live humanly and personably, you have to find in some way some kind of family, okay? Because man, the human being, is a social animal, okay? And we learn from each other. We're especially dependent. We're more dependent than higher mammals. We're extremely dependent in our first years. And for a long time, you know, our gestation period is a long time. So it's the first natural society. So the family, the Compendium of Social Doctrine, says the family is presented in the Creator's plan as the primary place of humanization for the person and society. It's the family that makes our society humane. Okay? It both personalizes us and humanizes us. You know, and you hear your mother's voice in your head sometimes. You know, fix that shirt. You know, look at those shoes. You know, tidy yourself up. You know, put away that phone. You know, but you know. You had a mum mentioned or not, you know, she was trying to say, listen, grow up and you have to learn courtesy. You have to learn self-respect. You have to learn manners. You have to learn the discipline I was talking about last night, okay? But you don't learn it unless you have a coach, okay? And your mum and dad, in a sense, are your coaches. You know, they're training you in human living. They're trying to make you respectable so you don't embarrass them in public, okay? So you don't have a meltdown at the shopping mall and things like that. You know, those things, you know, things families go through, okay? But they're, you know, for the best reasons, they want you to be better. They want you to do well. And it's all that, even in the comedy of it, even in the funniness of it, We had a priest in Rome one time, and when he got depressed about being a priest, he'd go down to the shopping mall, and he'd see all the mothers fighting with their children to get them away from sweets and things like that, and all the craziness, and he said, I'd feel much better. Go back, happy as a priest, And it's true, there is a great comedy, but there's a great tragedy as well. If in that crisis of parenthood, mothers and fathers don't know what they have to do, they don't have the proper skills, they don't have the proper staying power, for it, okay? So the family is the cradle of life and love. In the family, children learn their first lessons of practical wisdom, okay? I remember one time I just was helping out in a, what was it? It's a Montessori school. It's a long time ago, but I remember going through Noah's Ark with a young traveller child, and she'd point to little animals and she'd say, "Is that Hoppy? Is that dangerous?" Yeah. But that's how children learn. Someone points out, no, stay away from there. No, don't go out over that fence. Or don't go near that cow. She'll kick you. I think I got kicked. I think as a kid. But that's where they learn. Very early on. What's Hoppy. What's dangerous, and what you need to stay away from. What you can do. What you get praised for. What you get encouraged for. And you need both. Okay, you need correction and you need kind of praise and encouragement as well. Okay, so they learn what we call the virtues, the strengths or the abilities, or the excellences of life. So the family, we say, is the church in miniature. Okay, it's the domestic church. Sometimes we think the church is in the church, but no, the church herself is broader than that. She sees the church, its holy dwelling in the heart of the family. Okay, so you're coming from church to go to church. You understand? You're churched, in your family. Okay, you're becoming disciples of Jesus in your family. Okay, you're learning how to imitate Jesus in your family in that sense. Okay, yeah. Okay, so famulus, it means actually servant. The Latin means servant, and familia, I suppose the plural of that is a household of servants. That's the original meaning of it, okay? Famulus, family. But we've changed, the meaning has changed, but that's where it comes from, okay? So the family is the social institution for the raising of children, care of the elderly, and passing on values in society. Okay, that's some of the things we've been talking about. Okay, remember, the family is not just one-dimensional. The family is 3-generational or 4-generational. It's even more. It stretches back to your ancestors, to your forebears. Okay, and they're praying for you. One of the things when I was celebrating my first mass, I went home to my home parish, and I just as I was going out it didn't happen. It kind of happened almost by accident, but I was passing the graves of my family, like my granduncle, my granddad, my grandmother. It's like as if they were praying or they were part of it. That we don't come from anywhere. But they're part of this. And that's more a Catholic understanding of the family, okay? It's not just one couple who are in their 20-somethings, okay? Having a few kids, okay? It's not that, okay? It's grandmother and it's great-grandmother, and it's the tiniest, it's the next generation coming as well, okay? And they're all fitted in. They're all cared for, okay? They're all members of the family. Passing on values, we talked about that, okay? It mediates between the individual and the state. Okay, so the family is kind of the middle ground between this young person who will someday have a passport, will have a job, may work somewhere in Dublin or elsewhere, will contribute to the economy, etc., and the state. Okay, the mechanisms of the state. Okay, so the family is in between that. Okay, it supports the state in that sense. The state can't kind of intervene and take over responsibility of parents. We have today what's called the parent state, okay, or a nanny state, okay. It kind of takes over the functions and the responsibilities of members of the family, especially the parents. So we have to be careful about that, okay. It's our basic social unit. Our basic social unit, it takes us beyond ourselves. Okay, because in your family with your siblings, when they're kind of getting on your nerves, you know, you're learning about yourself. Okay, you're learning what works. You know, you're learning how far you can go in fun, and you're learning at times when you go too far. Do you understand? You know, when you're teasing someone, you go too far. You're learning what the boundaries are. But you're learning all these things about yourself from others, emotionally from your brothers and sisters, if you're lucky to have them, you know. And I'm not saying there's just one way of being a family, just to, you know, just talk about the general trend at the moment, okay. The family, the Pope says, has a subjectivity of its own, especially expressed to the Our Father. It's like the family has its own little culture. The family has its own little in-jokes, okay, that people outside the family don't understand. You know, like when I come home, when I was living in Switzerland for years, but when I come home and I have new clothes, I'd have a new cap or something, my mother would say, "Oh, wait till they see this." And they'd have a great joke, but that's their way, that was their way, and I'm sure in other families, it's their way of including me. I'm part of the joke, you know, I'm part of the humor in the family, okay? And they know, and it's only fun, and it's fine, you know. But that's how Irish people bring you in. If no one's laughing with you, if no one's teasing or joking at you among Irish people, there's something wrong. You're kind of a bit outside, they don't know, you know. And sometimes that can happen to you as a priest as well, you know. So the family has a subjectivity, a kind of identity of its own, that everyone knows, everyone gets, everyone susses straight away. And in tragedies as well, it's not just fun and, you know, humor, it's in tragedies, everyone's suffering if someone is suffering. If someone is a child, if someone is sick, someone's in hospital, things are really tough in the family, everyone's suffering. You know, when it's an economic difficulty, you know, when parents, you can see the strain in your parents, you're suffering too, you know. When things aren't going well, when the atmosphere isn't good in the house, you're suffering that. You're receiving that as well, you know. So there's something going on in the family that others, people outside that family don't understand, they don't know it, okay? You never know what's going on inside the houses of the walls of that house. You've heard that said before, haven't you? You don't know what's going on inside the walls of that house. And you don't, okay? Because it's a privileged space, it's a sanctuary. It's a place where we flourish, we grow, where we learn, we make mistakes, etc. Okay. Here's Pope John Paul again, okay? He says the first and fundamental structure for human ecology is the family, in which man receives his first formative ideas about truth and goodness, and learns what it means to love and to be loved, and thus what it actually means to be a person. It's the Pope's way of talking about psychology. Okay. Everyone wants to be loved. Every person is a lover. Okay. If we miss out that fundamentally in our life, we're missing something. And we'll try and gain it again and again, you know. Whether it's kind of proverbial or stereotypical or not, you know, girls tend to marry their father. Something about them, they attract, you know, people. I don't know whether that's, you know, that's stereotypical, but, you know. But it's this whole thing, it's John Paul again, okay? His whole thing is that to be a person means two things. It means to give love and to receive love. Okay? And that's not kind of just fuzzy stuff, okay? It's concrete stuff. It's being collected from school, okay? It's been given a lunch that you might not even like. You know what I mean? It's been, as I say to some couples, I said, you know, if your 8-year-old won't eat the dinner that you've cooked for him very carefully, he wants the chicken nuggets he had yesterday. You know, what do you do? Like, he's kicking up a tantrum in the kitchen. He's come home from school and he won't eat the dinner you've ready for him, you know? What do you do? Now, I got this from someone else, you know, but, you know, there's different things you could do, you know? But some people will give him the chicken nuggets. Unfortunately, he will probably get the chicken nuggets a lot in today's culture, you know? Which is not good for him, okay? Okay? Others might bring it out to all of proportion, okay? And, you know, that probably wouldn't help things as well, you know? But the advice I got was that just to take his dinner and just put it back into the oven, keep it heated, and said, it's there when you want it. Okay? Do you understand? He'd get hungry. Okay? I said, and it'd be lovely, it'd be tastier, you know? But it's, you know, it's a skill. Do you understand? But that's love. Okay? It's teaching discipline. It's teaching manners. It's teaching, you know, how to grow up. You know, how to not let your children walk all over you. Because if they do, it's not good for them. Okay? It's maintaining a line. It's keeping a boundary. And, you know, if some of you will become mothers and fathers, you know, you'll face it. You know, you'll kind of meet these things as well, okay? So, thus, what it actually means to be a person, okay? So, it's the first structure in our ecology, okay? The family. We've talked about human ecology, talked about the family. Okay, so marriage then. So, again, ours is an anthropology. The family is based on the union of one man and one woman in a covenant, an agreement that's permanent, that's a fixture, that's for the whole of their days, all of their days, and it's ordered to, you know, bringing children into the world, educating them, etc. And it's also for the good of the spouses themselves, okay? That's what the family is. That's how we understood it. That's how we understand it, okay? So what's a covenant? We hear about covenants, you know, all through the scriptures. And how can we talk about this union of man and woman as a covenant? You know, what is a covenant exactly? If we talk about marriage, for example, this wedding of man and woman as a covenant, what is it? Okay, here's one kind of definition of what a covenant is. Okay, a covenant is an agreement or oath of fidelity between parties made with or before God, in which one promises one's very self to the other. Okay? The promise entailed in a covenant thus demands an unconditional and more personal form of fidelity, even though it can be violated or even broken. Okay, the important thing is that covenant is not just like a contract. Okay, we still as Catholics see the family and marriage as an institution. There's a contractual basis. Okay, you're signing over things, property rights. It's all supported in law. They will change. Okay, inheritance rights. All those things will change. Okay, so very much marriage is an institution. Okay, and it should be supported by society. Okay, but when we talk about covenant, it's deeper. It's more on the interpersonal thing. Okay, it's more intimate. Okay, that when you make a covenant, you give a part of yourself or the whole of yourself into this agreement. Okay, or you don't disinclude part of yourself. Put it that way. It's more an intimate kind of self-giving. Okay, as it was between Israel and the Lord. When they gave themselves to God in this agreement, in this covenant, it was more, they gave their hearts. They gave all that they were and that they projected they would be. They gave it to God. And he kept his side of the covenant. And sometimes and often they broke theirs. Okay, so we can take that down onto the human level between husband and wife, between spouses. It's a covenant. It's a more intimate form of self-giving. So marriage is not just an institution. It goes to the existential core, the inner core of who we are, of what we're for. Okay, so it's just to talk about that. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's just to bring the biblical language into, and it always is fragile in that sense. There's always a chance that the freedom of the other person will get confused and they'll choose something that they haven't agreed to, you know, or you haven't agreed to. Okay. Okay. Now, I said this in Wales recently, but it's good to kind of overlap. It's one of the key statements of Pope John Paul II in the Theology of the Body. It's well into it, but it's TOB 43, so what it'll be, he's well into his catechesis. Okay, he says human nature is by its nature co-educational, and its dignity as well as its balance depend at every moment of history and in every place of geographical longitude on who she shall be for him and he for her. So for Pope John Paul II, to kind of put it more simply, he thinks the structure of society, the stability of the world, is built on this covenant. Okay? And it's very interpersonal. It's not what you can do for me, what's my advantage here, how can I economically profit here. It's who you are for me. Okay, so it's the love story kind of language. It's who she is for him and he for her. Okay? Spouse, best friend, second self. You know, the language of love, language of friendship often talks about this, okay? You know, not a ball and chain. You know, the way we talk about it, you know. No, who she is. So the structure and stability of society depend on the goodness, integrity, and intimate bond of spouses, if they're getting on or not. Okay? If they're, you know, if the doors are swinging on their hinges, in that sense, they're kind of, things are working in our family. I remember one person saying, because I'm from the countryside, I'm only about 15 miles away from here, but talking about, you know, families in the countryside, he says, you go into that family, you get so much love, you don't know what to do with it. You know, that was kind of the older kind of thing, you know, and because there was something happening in that family. You know, there was something very intimate and strong and wholesome and good. If they were praying the rosary, you pray the rosary with them. If they were having lemonade or biscuits, you know, you get them, you'll be brought in. And yeah, it's true, sometimes you're brought into, not just country but family, you're brought into families when you get kind of depressed about society and all the culture and all things like that, you know, just go to someone's family and they bring you in and you meet everyone. It's a completely different experience, you know, and they don't have to be supernatural, super normal or anything like that, you know, but they just have to be themselves and it's different. Yeah, so when you go into a place where things are healthy or they're working in some sense, you know, it's a great gift. I remember one time with friends, we had a prayer group in Tala. It was a good while ago now, 20 years ago, perhaps. No, not that long ago, 15, 20 years ago. And I remember two of the members got married, John and Moira, and 10 years after we were married, we went back to their house to have mass in their house, you know. But I wasn't expecting, as I was coming out to the altar, we had it in the living room, we had a little altar set up, you know. In front of the altar, there were three little girls, you know, and John and Moira and their guests and things like that. And I nearly started crying. It just hit me, you know. This is what it's about. There's just three human beings there, lovely, all dressed up for the occasion, and they weren't there 10 years ago. And you could get a sense in that family, this is the way it's meant to be. There's something good, there's something right here. And that's what kind of hit me, you know. I said, oh, first not for crying now or something, you know. But it was just the girls, just to see them after 10 years, and it just hit me, you know, in that sense. Okay, so who she shall be for him and who he is for her. It's interpersonal, it's intimate, it's deep, it's kind of deep, that's kind of deep, but getting too mushy, not getting too mushy, but it's respectful, you know, it's working, it's the way it's meant to be, okay? Okay, so back to a little bit of the negative again. So in our culture, Pope Francis talks about this a good bit. He says, there's, well, these are my words, the paternal eclipse, okay? We live in a society without fathers, okay? That's one of the, now the statistic is a bit old, but in the United States, maybe 20 years ago, I think it was 25% of children went to bed at night without their biological father being present in the house. It's a bit out of date now, but it's, you know, but I think that was the statistic. You know, it's a lot. 1 in 4 didn't have a relationship, you know, wasn't there, okay? He says, in Pope Francis in L'Amoris Laetitia, he says, in Western culture, the father is said to be symbolically absent, missing or vanished, okay? He said at first, it's interesting because often in traditional families, the father is very much an authoritarian figure. He's really the boss, you know, and can be quite remote. And that kind of bossiness, I don't know what you call it, but could be a bit overbearing. Okay, because that's the kind of way it kind of developed. He said, at first, this was perceived as a liberation. Okay. Liberation from the father as master, from the father as the representative of a law imposed from without, from the father as the arbiter of his children's happiness, and an obstacle to the emancipation and autonomy of young people. Okay, so, but, you know, Pope is saying, like, it's gone way beyond that. Okay, there was a kind of a bit of leverage. Okay, I suppose if a father was overly authoritarian, and if he wasn't there, yeah, there was a bit of leverage. There was a bit more freedom. Okay, but he's really pointing to the lack. Okay, that this small liberation is not worth, you know, what's happened in society. The great void that people are suffering, are living because of absentee fatherhood, okay? And that's right through our culture. Okay, so I want to talk about, okay, what might fatherhood be like? Okay, so these are some little kind of pointers what fatherhood should be like, and we could, you know, think of it as some kind of way of modeling what way we should go. He says, a father is fruitful, okay? Father, by his very being, is generative. If you're called father, in some way you've generated. Do you understand? Your seed has been passed on. Okay, you're someone's father. Who's your father? You know, where do you come from? You know, who do you belong to? That's what we were asking Ireland before. You know, whose are you? You know, but it's a family thing. Are you Sean of Micheline? You know, that kind of, you know, the way. But they always saw it in terms of the family. You know, and you'd have, you know, different Seans in maybe one family, and you'd have Shawnee, and you'd have Sean and Sean Og, and, you know, you have all these kind of different kind of names, but it's all about the family. Okay, so father is fruitful. Okay, he's generative. He's not only biologically fruitful; he's fruitful in other ways as well. He does things. He might have a workshop. He might be good at DIY. You know, he might be good on the camping trip. He might get you to where you're actually going. You know, okay. But he's fruitful. He comes up with ideas. He fixes things. Okay, he's generous. He gives you money for the amusements. Okay, all that. Okay. Second thing, and you can you know, give lots of examples of fruitfulness. Okay, so father is reliable. Okay, if dad says he'll be there, he'll be there. You know, there was a lovely story. Was it in Armenia? There was that earthquake, and some children were trapped underneath the rubble, and all the rescue workers had given up. And there was still some alive, and one of the lads was, you know, the boys saying, "My dad will come, you know, my father will come for us, you know." And his dad was outside, kept tunneling. I can't remember the number of hours, it was 38 hours, it was a long, huge period, okay? He found them all alive. You know, I told you my dad would come. You know, that sense, you know. Father will be there. Father will say something, and when he says something, it'll happen. Okay, Father promises something, it'll happen. So you learn, the child is learning, the daughter is learning, or the son is learning, that Dad's word is reliable. Okay, it's good. Father is responsible. He's not careless. They say when women kind of go out of what's authentic femininity, they get controlling, okay? But they say when men go out of authentic masculinity, they get irresponsible. They go off with the lads drinking. They drink the wages, you know, things like that. They disappear. They don't look after their duty. They're not doing what they're meant to be doing. They're not spending time with those people that they're meant to spend time with, their beloveds. Okay, they're off doing something else. Okay, Father is courageous. Yeah, he's the defender. He's the shield of his family. He's a human shield. Okay, he's a protector. Whether it's a stray bullock or a stray goat or whatever it is, you know, in the countryside, or someone walking suspiciously around your neighborhood, your dad is a protector. Okay, he's courageous. He's strong in that sense. Father is spiritual. Father has a way of praying, but it's also very masculine. It's not effeminate in that sense. It's manly. You know, I remember Father Philip Mulryan, who used to play at Man United. You know, he was saying he was very touched by the Legion of Mary men when he met them. I think it was in Belfast. You know, like they were very manly, but they're also very spiritual. You know, they'd spend their time praying and praying the rosary, you know, there's something about it. So Father is spiritual. I remember my own granddad as well. Just before he was quite old, he was in bed and you're getting quite fragile, and they tried to stop him praying. You know, no need for you going down on your knees beside your bed, because he did that all his life. And he says, as long as I'm able to, I'll get down there. You know, that kind of sense. So it was just a habit of prayer there. You know. So Father is present. You kind of learn this a bit in spiritual fatherhood as well. You know that you only have to be there. You know, you don't have to do a great deal. But when you go missing, World War III breaks out. I don't know. I've experienced that 2 or 3 times. You know, you go away for a week and you come back and it's World War III happening. It's funny. I don't know. Something about the Father's present. Okay, that's spiritual father. But I think as well, a father just needs to be there. Okay, it's a rock, it's stability, it's a presence. Okay, it's something you can't replace. You can't substitute it. Okay, but when he's there, it works. You know. Father is forgiving. Okay, this is especially when you're young and you've put a tennis ball or a slitter through the glass house and you have to make the long walk back to your dad, okay, or back into the office or wherever he is, you know, and you get let off. You get a merciful greeting, you know. Well, that's a good experience of fatherhood, okay. So he doesn't hold grudges. He's not cynical. He's not trying to catch you out. Okay, he's not remembering what you did a few years ago. You know, and that's very difficult, you know, to forget. He forgets. Okay? So I remember a friend of mine in school, one I knew in school, he just said that their father would, I think he had an office or something, he'd go into the father, and the father, he'd just talk to them. Like if they were misbehaving or something, and that was the end of it. The father had a great way with them. He would just be able to gently point out the mistake and what's expected. And if that was a man, he'd go out a bigger man, you know. If he was a young boy, he'd go out a bigger boy, you know. And that's what fathers are meant to do, okay? Because they have an authority there as well, okay? And father is sacrificial. Father has to put his own needs sometimes to the side. Need for sleep, need for rest, even need for food if you're trying to feed a few people, and children. That the father is willing to make little sacrifices, and that's actually going to count in the end, I think that the sacrifices that have been made for you. You don't realize it when you're young. A friend of mine said one time, she says, as you grow older, you get to know your parents better. As you get older, you get to know them better. Because when you're a teenager, really young, you're just take. You don't realize that they are doing so much for you, and you can never really pay it back. So father is sacrificial. So just some pointers, to get a sense of what's the character of the father, what's the role, what's the responsibility, what difference does he make? He makes a lot of difference, I know this is not everyone's experience of fatherhood as well. I'm not trying to say it is, but this is what it, where we at least should point to. Okay, motherhood. So nice ones, again from Pope Francis, he says, mothers are the strongest antidote to the spread of self-centered individualism. It is they who testify to the beauty of life. I think that's good. I think it says enough, being other-centered. As I was saying in Wales, that John Paul II had that sense that that the woman, the feminine charism or essence or being, has that ability more than the male to be attentive to the other, attentive to the person. And he says that parenthood or motherhood grows that disposition even more. Okay? That mothers are just able to be present or able to be attentive to the other person, their needs, their vulnerabilities, their fragility, their helplessness at times, Because, when a mother becomes a mother, she's dealing with helplessness, 24/7, really. You're dealing with someone who's helpless, who can't feed themselves, who can't, dry themselves, who can't wash themselves, can't do anything, and before, birth as well, in that sense, okay. Yeah, Thomas Aquinas, good, 13th century, is good. Mothers, who are those who love the most and seek to love more than to be loved. Okay, I think that's kind of true. It's kind of stereotypical as well. It's like Italian mothers, but it's not just that. It's all mothers. It's Jewish mothers. It's mothers of other religions. It's Catholic mothers. It's Irish mothers. Something in motherhood. As priest when kind of getting priest saying in a homily one time, he just said, at least when they're in school, you know where they are. And he was making a comparison between priesthood. He says you can't be a priest 9 to 5, no more than you can be a mother 9 to 5. Do you understand? It's not a 9 to 5 job. You don't clock out at 5 if you're a mother. Okay, that's the idea. It's changing. It's nutritive. It's growing. It's challenging. It asks a lot. Yeah, and this is, again, it's Pope John Paul's, his sense of feminine dignity, again, which is very strong in his pontificate. He says, parenthood, even though it belongs to both, is realized much more in the woman, especially the prenatal period. It is the woman who pays directly for this shared generation, which literally absorbs the energies of her body and soul. So in terms of the scales of justice, they're kind of tipped more towards the woman at this period. She's really doing the work, in a sense, doing a lot of it. Okay, she's taking the cost, paying the burden in a very physical, emotional, psychological way and spiritual way. And the Pope says, well, you have to recognize that. Okay, in terms of parenting, it's not just all equal. Okay, it's the mother. Yeah, so that's what I was saying. So it's commonly thought that women are more capable than men of paying attention to another person, and that motherhood develops this predisposition even more. Okay, that's what I was saying. Okay, yeah, it develops the person. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. You've probably seen this one before, but discernment. Okay. How are you going to meet the man who's going to be the father of your children? Okay. How are you going to meet the person who's going to be the mother of your children? You know, those things. Okay. What are you looking for? Roses, chocolates, wine, nice dresses, or nice charming manners. I don't know. What are you looking for? You know, we're probably looking for those as well. You know, but here's five C's on looking for maybe your soulmate, a spouse. You know, if you're a workable marriage, a happy marriage, a good partnership, you know, all the days of your life, that sense, okay? First C is the people have to be compatible. There has to be some kind of adaptability. There has to be some fittingness in their two personalities. You know? It can't be always on the outside. You have to connect, you have to knit in some way. You have to have some common interests. Maybe if you speak two different languages, and one is not proficient, that can be incompatible. You may not be able to break that cultural divide. I'm not saying you can't have intercultural marriages, you know, or different languages. I'm not saying that, but sometimes it's too much. One person's not developed in the other's language. Yeah, one may be just really sciencey and into projects and spends a lot of time in that, you know, that kind of career drive, okay? And the other may be just very, very arty or something, or they may have a different sense of humor. They may not have the same kind of sense of humor, may not laugh at the same things, you know? They may not have the same sensitivities. Their personalities could be so far apart that they're not compatible. So you've got to look for compatibility, whatever it is, in its various factors. You have to be compatible. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so the second one is communication. Communication is, the Irish way of communicating is kind of a lot of small talk, you know. We do a lot of social kind of talking about nothing. And we're good at it. You know, when I came home from England, I was living in England for 2 years. I remember getting on the bus, I think it was Dublin, and this lady got on, elderly lady, she was chatting away to the bus driver, and I wasn't used to this in England, you know. And I says, I haven't seen this in ages, you know, talking about nothing. But still, she did every day, get on the bus, like chat away for a while. It's part of a ritual, you know, getting on the bus. But it's small talk. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way we are. You wouldn't get it in other countries, you know. But okay, so we have to go past the general drive of conversation, okay, the nice politesse or the courtesies or politeness that we have, okay? It's beyond that. The communication has to go deeper, has to go into your very self. It has to go into your very story. It has to be in the revelation of yourself, the revealing of yourself. Not all at once, you know, when we talk about that emotional chastity, which is right, you know, that you don't divulge everything on a first date, which is really silly, you know. But gradually get to know someone, this apprenticeship in getting to know another person. And that communication may become intimate. It doesn't have to be physically intimate, to be intimate. Okay, where you're beginning to see the other person how they take what they're like, who they are. So it has to drop. As I said, the conversation has to drop. The communication has to drop. It can be 2 levels. It can be the other level as well, where you're just trying to organize parties or, organize things and get the children educated and all that. And all that dialogue, all that spousal dialogue has to take place as well. But there's another level as well, and just to maybe watch for that the conversation drops. And some people, it's easy. It will go on to another level very quickly. Other times, I suppose, it can be hard work. And sometimes you never get there. You always feel kind of a bit distant or something. It's strange. Character, then, I say, is the third one. What's the person's character? Pride and Prejudice. What is your character? She's trying to work out what Mr. Darcy's really like. And she's perplexed by his character. She can't work out his character. Is he a good man? Is he a noble man? Or is he just a spoiled brat? And eventually she changes her mind. She said, no, he's not. He's a good and noble, high-minded man. She sees him. She gets to know his character. Well, that, in the whole story, you can read it yourself, but it's about character. It's very hard to get to know a person's character. Unless maybe sometimes your relationship is tested, or you go through a hard time, and you have to see, will the person be still there? Or will they just walk away? Or will they just be indifferent? Or will you be going through an awful time and the person is just miles away, like even if they're across the table? Are they loyal? Are they honest? Do they talk about you to others? Did you reveal secrets that you've given to others? Things like that. Because remember, Peter Kreeft says the only virtue we have today is niceness. But niceness is not a good barometer. I think we should be nice, I think as Christians, as disciples of Jesus, we have to be nice, But niceness is very easy. Niceness can be kind of swarmy, kind of charming. And I know my sister, she's very funny. She's, oh, he's so nice, and she's often right, they're very nice, but it's not enough, I can go on to any soap, and I'll find nice people on it, But I'll find also very unredeemed characters. Do you understand? The person who floats from one relationship to another. It's not loyal, it's not sticking power, those kind of things, okay? So things to watch out for. Commitment, a big one, because you may be dating someone who may be very serious, but the person may not be committed to it. It's convenient. It's good fun. We've good nights out, we've good friends. We go to Bray, we go to Greystones. We go do things like that. We go for walks, all that. It's all, but somehow they're not committed. If it came to something bigger, like a question like marriage, the other person won't be there. Do you understand? And you can be with someone for 3 years more and they're not committed. And you can be very good friends, but they're not committed. I sometimes ask couples just before they're getting married, because I kind of know the answer, so I can ask it, I say, can you see yourself with someone else? Now, I've never asked a couple who said yes. Okay. I suppose I kind of knew I could ask the question. Do you know what I mean? You kind of know when you meet them, And they say no, couldn't see themselves somewhere else. And that's the right answer, So it's commitment, okay? And it's a tough one, in kind of our generations. Well, I'm not your generation, but this time, because we're bachelors, or we have our own flat, we have our own career, our own car, our own bank account. We have all these things. You're going to lose a lot if you get married. Do you understand? You have your own golf weekends and things like that, but you can't do that. Okay. So yeah, it's a question. Is the person committed? Are they committed to you? Are they who you are for them? Do you know who she is for him and who he is for her? It's here, it's commitment, I think, And then chastity, which we try to promote in Pure in Heart. Yeah, it's kind of like a truth gauge. Okay, if it's chaste, all the other splendid and very confusing sometimes. Emotions are not getting in, okay? All the chemical bonding, all that happens, okay? If you're already physically involved with someone, okay? If it's chaste, you can see clearer. You have a better sense of values. You're a better judge of character. Communication could be better. And you're better able to see what's being presented to you, okay? And you're better able to judge the friendship, okay? Because if a relationship becomes sexual very quickly, because of the powerfulness that God has put into that, that physicality, the powerful ingredient, it kind of takes over, and you won't really need to talk to each other, and you won't really know each other. And a lot of the other things could probably very easily disappear. You can't see a person's character. I don't think, it's harder to see it, in that kind of way. Does that make sense? Okay, so 5 C's, and then just one slide left. We're over time, are we? Yeah, okay. So God, okay. What's God got to do with all this, okay? Let's put Pope John Paul II say this. It says, our God, in his deepest mystery, is not solitude, but a family. For he has within himself fatherhood, sonship, and the essence of the family, which is love. Very nice, isn't it? It's very simple. Coming into that sanctuary of love and life, which is the family, we meet God. Okay? Our family can raise us to God. If our family is not working, if there's breakdown, if there's rejection, if there's oppression, and if all kinds of things that happen in families, if they're wrong, they can turn us away from God. A lot of the major atheists probably turned away from God because of a dysfunctional relationship with their father. See that again and again, so God is a communion of persons. God is a communion of love, okay? God is the model, far remote and far beyond and far transcending all families because he's God, but he is what we're aspiring to. He is that dialogue of love. He is that intimate communion. He is that exchange. He is that self-giving. He's all the values that we aspire to, okay? They're there already in God in some sense, okay? And because we're the image of God, somehow there's a transmitter there in us. And it searches, there's a homing kind of device there. Something in us that wants to be somehow like God, or search where God is, even in our families, in our communions, in our solidarities. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's what we're trying to get at. Okay. Okay, that's a lot. But maybe food to think. Maybe we won't have questions now, but maybe let's take a break. We have got a good bit of time, although we're late at the moment. We do have a good bit of time structured into this morning, So let's take 20 minutes, will we? Does that be okay? And we can maybe talk after the next one. Okay, thanks. Okay.